We feel refreshed from the weekend, ready to encounter the week. I actually was pondering what God actually spoke to you and taught you this week, and maybe, or even this morning during worship, like if God said something or something struck you about God and how He actually revealed that to you. That's my question. So I'd love to hear. This morning, I was saying something that God revealed to you, and maybe how did He reveal that to you? So this morning, I was having a little bit of a rough morning, and so God said, "Oh, it's okay." I felt like He told me to sit. I came to worship late because I sat out here somewhere, just where I could just see the trees and the birds and the nature, and it was kind of quiet, but I could hear the worship in the background, which was awesome. And I was sitting there pondering and just being like, what's my problem? Why am I all like, I don't know, all over inside a little bit. I wasn't ready to be around lots of people. That's actually what because I'm actually quite introverted, and then it's overwhelming to be all of a sudden around a bunch of people with all this noise. You know, even though we're worshiping God, it's just a little bit, sometimes a lot to jump into, like first thing in the week. And God said, it's okay. So let's just sit here for a few minutes. And He really spoke to me just in the peace and the quiet, but then talked about how, just reflecting on how, with everybody in their different expressions, the beauty of that, right? And how everyone comes together and has an expression, and it creates a whole. And I thought it was an incredible thing because I was personally struggling with jumping in with everyone, but the way that He spoke to me about it was to remember why and the significance within the whole and how it becomes a beautiful thing, right? And so it was interesting to me that God wooed me into the desire to be part of all of these people in the midst of where I was. And then I wanted again to, okay, great, that's true, that's so beautiful. And then I just pondered on it for a while, reflected. There was no pressure, there was no hurry. And then I went up and was with everyone and got to pray for people a little bit and be part of the whole. And so for me, I feel like God spoke to me in that way because it's what I needed. And I'm quite reflective. And so I feel like He just had a conversation with me, reflecting. And then my reflection naturally would lead to what I really want internally. But at the moment, I just was having a hard time with that. So I feel like I got a greater, I don't know if a revelation would be, but just a greater heart for the whole and within the community. And then when I went up there, He was highlighting like how the community interacts with one another and how it's the vulnerability and the openness within our faith and within the community of Christ that actually draws us together. Because we're being ourselves, right? And we get to operate in who we are and be received for that and find that place. So anyway, that was a really beautiful thing that I think started earlier in the weekend, being at the Catholic Church with all these people and doing all these beautiful things, but then feeling overwhelmed by like the masses. And so that was but I felt like to ask. Maybe we can share some of those things before getting into what we are going to talk about today. So would anybody else like to share? Yeah.
I need to put this into words because I haven't fully processed it yet.
Yeah.
But yesterday at the Korean youth group where we serve, the pastor was reading this Bible verse about how God's mercies are due every morning. And before it was His mercies, it's unending, blah, blah. But then he explained it further, saying that it's new every morning. So when we wake up each morning, we have a new chance, like God is giving us a new chance. And so from that, I feel like I have a better appreciation of just waking up in the morning and saying, oh, it's a new day. Like I can live this for God, like yesterday I might have messed up, but this is a new day.
Yeah. That's great.
It's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
I think he's just been speaking to me about my role and like reminding me of who he's told me that I am and to step out into that. And so he's just reminding me that like I'm like an intercessor and that I'm a prophet and a gift and that I should be giving my gift and stuff. And then I haven't fully processed this either, so I'm having trouble saying it, but yeah, he's just been answering my prayer basically that to be more intimate with him and just reminding me that he is leading me closer to him and that I don't have to stress out about it.
Yeah. That's great. How would you identify that he's been speaking that to you? Or showing you or revealing that to you?
Okay, well, when I almost died on Friday. Okay, so yeah, I was like in serious pain during the Good Friday service, and it was all during the whole service, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, what is this and stuff? And I remembered that I had actually prayed that I wanted to understand the cross more, and that he was not, I don't want to say that God was giving me the pain, but he was allowing me to see a glimpse of the pain that he went through, because it was really, really bad. And then even the pastor at Korean church, he confirmed it, because he was talking about childbirth, and he was saying a mother will go through childbirth and it's a beautiful thing, but he's I think the pain of childbirth is similar to the pain of the cross. And I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking. And then he was saying other things about how your body has to take 6 months to go back to normal and blah blah blah. But yeah, it was just kind of confirmation that God was almost allowing me to see that pain or something like that. And he was saying something about childbirth, so I assume that he's working something new in this season.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, so cool.
Yes.
I went to Hilo on Saturday, and then the way to Hilo, we literally went through cloud. It was huge. The cloud is so beautiful, and then I feel like I can touch it. And then we literally went through the cloud, and then I just remembered I cry all the time, so don't. Yeah, never mind if I'm crying. But I went through, and then I just remembered the feeling. I just remembered Israelites in wilderness, Mountain Sinai, the cloud came up on the top of the mountain, and then everyone got scared, and then no, I don't want to see him, just Moses, you go there. And then I just remembered, and oh my gosh, actually when I saw the first time, I got scared, wow, it's kind of scary. It's not bad scary, but a little bit scary, intimidating. And then later I felt, wow, I told him this is Israelite, it's really scary. And then there was a fire things, when he speaks, it's thunder, it's whoa. And then it was Easter, and then Jesus came to Israel human, the earth. And then he died, and he rose again. And then now, how just he's so tender and gentle, compared to Mountain Sinai, and then wow, it's just unbelievable. It feels unreal. Do I really love you? Do I really know you? Even it was just so mysterious and wondrous experience for me. Just going through the cloud, it was just made me overwhelming, and yeah, it was so great. And then I just this moment, wow, it's His grace. It's so hot, but it's so good. The weather is so good. Everything is just His grace, and I'm so thankful for this moment.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. That's cool. Anybody else like to share?
Well, we took a drive because it was my husband's birthday on Saturday, so we took a drive around. We went up through Waimea and then went to Hilo and then cut across Saddle Road. And it was my son, our son, my husband, and my mom in the car, the four of us. And when we left Hilo, there was only a quarter tank of gas in the car. And we said, we did say to each other we should put gas in before we left Hilo. But we forgot. And I was driving on the way back because James, my son, was driving to Hilo and my husband was tired and I was like, okay, I'll drive. I don't mind driving. So I was driving and then I realized, oh no! The light's on! And I don't even know how far we had to go because we're going through the clouds. The Saddle Road gets very cloudy and foggy and then like sweating like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to pull to the side of the road and who do we call and just all of that. And we're checking, the car has a little thing where you can see the range, like how many more miles you can go on the gas the tank that you have. And it was like 16 miles and we had like 30 more miles to go to the nearest gas station. And so we're like praying and going and just every 5 minutes, we can make it, like, but the light is on. going. And I was trying not to push the gas so that we could just cruise. And then thank goodness it's like a lot of it is downhill. Yeah, sure. So okay, don't press on the gas, just cruise. And all the cars are passing me and we're like, okay, it's okay. It was crazy. But as I was going through that whole process, like by personality, I tend to I share, I'm preemptive. I like to get things done, and I often just react and do things on my own and take charge and just when things are just like, and I often do things on my own. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but I get things done and I just plow through. But I was so glad that day that I was not alone. I don't know how I would have felt if I was in the car by myself, going through this massive fog, not in the light blinking and not knowing how much more I have to go. And because if I stopped the car, it would take more gas to, I'm trying not to stop or push or whatever and just cruising as much as I could. And everyone was like, we can do this, we can make it. They're all like Googling, the fastest way or the shortest place where the gas station was and the support of that. And I was just thinking, wow, the impact of what a family can bring and what a team can bring. That I don't have to feel stressed, I don't have to be alone, that I don't have to bear the burden all by myself. Even though I was the one driving driving the car, that I'm not alone, that I'm not in this by myself. And it was just a huge kind of lesson for me. Just to go, we're here as a team, and if we stop, we all stop. It's not just me. And that's okay too because we're together. And so
that's good.
An experience.
So you made it to the gas station?
We did make it to. Okay, so the closest gas station is Waikoloa, all right, just for everyone, and it's all downhill, so you can do it.
That's incredible.
Nice.
Yes.
Good ending, even right? You guys did make it. We have never had any experience like that before.
Just recently, actually. We did the same thing.
Oh, really?
We
We
were
went back to Hilo.
Oh.
Because it was downhill all the way.
So we just put it in neutral, literally, and went downhill all the way to Hilo.
Yeah.
Because we had zero gas. Because the car, we didn't know, it took too much gas to get up
Right.
Because we went up to Mauna Kea, so.
Yeah, that's different.
It
That
took
takes a
way too
lot.
much gas. The car was like,
Yeah.
So we were coming down from the mountain because it was all fog and the light was blinking and we're like, oh my gosh. So yeah, we cruised. You can do it when you're going downhill.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, make sure you have,
We'll take a rest.
yes, when you go out. It's just good.
good lesson.
Good lesson.
We'll take.
Does anybody else want to share anything? Nice. Well, I just, God speaks to us in so many ways, yeah. And to me, it's fascinating, and he speaks differently to different people. But when you share with me, like Chris is sharing, I'm in the experience. I'm like, oh, well, how would I react? What would I do, right? And there's identification. And I love that God allows us to walk through things in a learning process and in a journey to learn and to grow and to move forward. He's not really like, here's this book, have a read, and you're sorted now. So there's the daily dynamic of relationship that he teaches us and through different forms and different ways. And so some of it is reading and then getting understanding, but then there's also the action involved, yeah, and the walking through and encountering surprises and figuring out how to respond and how to dynamically operate within the truth and the ways that he gives to us, which is beautiful. And what makes God so amazing and fun and sometimes over the top, I think. But in a good way, like the challenge. And I do like a good challenge. I think we all do in some form. And I love that God is not intimidated to push those for us so that we can continue to move forward. Well, this week we are going to today talk about a little bit about learning styles this morning, and talk a little bit about the heart of reading in the group, because that's a really big thing for the DBS. Like, we want to read together in community, maybe a little bit on the dynamics of community. And then we're going to get into mostly skills this week. So this week is skill-based in that we'll start inductive Bible study. We'll have a look at inductive Bible study. Melinda's going to lead us through that for refreshing, but also for, I think we're all in different places within the skill, right? Remember Melinda talked about the skills, and we might be in different places within the skill of inductive study. But it would be helpful if us as a community understood, where is everyone in this skill? Can they copy? Do you know what I mean? Can they adapt? And then we can actually work together effectively in helping one another continue to grow and succeed in helping our students as well gain the skill of inductive study and leading small groups. So today we're definitely going to get into inductive study this afternoon. Tomorrow we're going to do some workshops where we're actually using it. So again, skills, right? Practicing using the skill. And then we are going to be getting into small groups, and then we're going to practice small groups. We're going to get into groups and have turns actually conducting a small group and giving an overview of a book. Like when we read it, we want to give an overview of that book before we read it. So that would be our job, and eventually the student's job. So we're going to model that, then they're going to do it, and we're going to help them. Yeah. So all of the skills within this week, and maybe just Monday next week, these are all the skills that we're also wanting the students to be able to do, and we need to be able to facilitate that and help them. So the goal this week is that you feel like you can even start. Okay? We're not saying your skill has to be expert. We're saying, can you do step 1? Because when your students come in, they can't even do step 1. But you can lead them to step 1, and as you are continuing to practice in leading them in step 1, you continue to grow and you keep bringing them with you. Right? And that's how it works with skills. Okay? And so we want to make sure everyone feels like, I can do that. And there's insecurities in that and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I feel insecure too, a lot, in things that I've done for many years. I met with Andrew yesterday, and we talked about teaching. And I told him, yes, I've taught on Genesis, like a good handful at least, but I would still be nervous to teach. But then I also told him that one of my good friends told me, he was in his 70s, John Kuna, and he came to speak on the BCC, and he said, "Oh, Anna, can you pray for me this morning?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, I'm so nervous." I said, "Really? After all these years?" Like, he'd been teaching 30, 40 years. Like, you're nervous. Oh, yes. Always still nervous. I said, "Oh." He's like, "But no, it's a good thing, because then I'm reliant on the Holy Spirit. I recognize it's not just me. I can't teach. I can't impart. I actually need the Holy Spirit, and I get nervous because I don't want to miss how the Holy Spirit wants to use me in my teaching." And I thought, oh, that's gold. I've taken that with me. I think it was like my second or third school that I was leading that he told me that. And so it's a good thing to be nervous, and I want us to be able to embrace some of that, because it is good for us to recognize that we're not perfect. We don't have it all. We actually need something beyond ourselves. We actually are, again, stepping into something that's maybe a little bit bigger than ourselves. And that's where God comes in and makes it possible. Yeah. And so I think some of that will come up as we're doing skills and feeling like maybe we're not where we think we should be or where we want to be. But I want to also ask that you would be asking God this week how you're doing. Because sometimes we can be really terrible critics on ourselves, but God thinks we're doing awesome. And we should have that perspective. Yeah. So I want to ask you to do that as well this week. Okay? But that we'll be open and honest and share how we're doing. And if you have questions, we are very happy to continue to help outside even the time that we have with you. I'm totally willing to do that as well. Okay? So this morning we're just going to talk about learning styles a little bit, because I think that is important just to have an idea. Does anybody know what their learning styles, do you guys know about learning styles? Yes, yes. Okay, so you've heard generally learning styles. How many of you feel like, oh, I know what my prominent learning style, I tend to go towards? Okay. So how is that helpful? I'm asking the people that know, because since you know, how does it help that you know that? Krister.
So I'm prominently kinesthetic and visual, and so they kind of fluctuate which one's more prominent, but I know that since being kinesthetic, when I'm holding something in my hand, society has taught me that playing with something is distracting and means you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. But I know that when I'm holding something and have something in my hand or playing with something, that I actually am able to concentrate better, and therefore I don't feel bad about doing that. As well as if there's visual things being brought into the presentation, I tend to remember them more and pay attention more to those things. Mm-hmm. Okay, I need that kind of stuff.
Okay. Okay. Melinda?
I'm auditory primarily, and then kinesthetic secondary. which means that I can easily get distracted by visual stuff, and then I can't hear actually what's going on. It's a weird thing. So sometimes I need to look down, and then I need to take notes and not actually look up, and it looks like I'm disengaged and not paying attention, but actually if I watch them, sometimes I get distracted from what I'm hearing and I miss it, because then I'm thinking about what I see. And so because I know that I'm auditory, I will often look down, and then also it helps me for when I do like reading books and things like that. Like I remember more if I listen to it. So I buy books on tape because I know that I can learn that way.
Okay.
Really well.
So there's the aspect in understanding your learning style that it actually helps you learn, but that there's the aspect of where it can be a problem too. Okay? And so it helps both ways, yeah? And so I want to talk about that a little bit. First, because it's helpful to yourself, but then it's also helpful to understand somebody else, because we are working with other people and we're helping them to learn. It's helpful to understand their makeup, right? Again, valuing the individual and what might be helpful to them. Okay? And so the four main learning styles that kind of everyone's like, yeah, these are the four main, and then there's a few more that I think are helpful to consider, are visual, which has been mentioned, oral, verbal, and physical. You can name these lots of other things. People name them lots of other, but these are just the ones I'm going to use. So being visual means that something, pictures, maps, you see something, it basically, learning styles, maybe I should take a step back. Learning styles basically helps us to, how do we naturally retain more information? So there's different forms that help me to remember, to recount, and to take in that information easier than others. Okay? So everyone has like a preferred style, but we all also are able to take in from all of them. Okay, so it's not like I'm visual, I'm not physical, so therefore if I do anything physical then it's not helpful. That's not actually true, because we're holistic beings, and so me doing something physical is still helpful, it's just not my preferred way of retaining the most information. So I just want to throw that out there, because sometimes I think, oh, this is my strength. That's not. And you kind of disqualify yourself. But that's not true. It's all of them. It's just ones are more prominent, okay? And research shows that each learning style uses different parts of your brain, which is why it's helpful. And you can actually exercise other learning styles, because it exercises your brain's a muscle, and if you exercise those, then they become more prominent for you because you've actually exercised a muscle. Jeremiah's exercising, and things get easier because he's exercising the muscle. Your brain's the same way, actually. And so when you're not good at something, it can also be an indication that maybe you should exercise your brain to try to practice doing those, so that you're better at them, okay? And the more holistically you use your brain, meaning all the different components of your brain at once, the more information you actually retain, because you're exercising the whole, okay? And so that's why it's important to have different forms of learning together, because people retain more information that way, okay? So we have the visual, which is also referred to with like spatial, right? Pictures, images, space around them, can remember things quite easily. They look at a map. They can remember like the area. Some people, like you're in a new town and they're like, I just need a map so I can tell where I'm at. Okay, like they're probably a bit visual. They can look at the map. Okay, got it. I know where I'm at. They can remember it. They spatially understand where they are in their perimeter. You see what I mean? So it's a spatial thing. Okay. The oral or auditory, which is what Melinda was saying, is also tends to be musical. Okay, because musical is an auditory thing. So listening. Okay, so she mentioned listening to books. You know, I'm terrible. I'm not strong auditory, but I've been practicing, which I think I've gotten better. Because I'm visual, heavily visual, and if anything's in front of me, the ear is not the prominent thing, right? So I'm like, la, 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 you know, and so I have to like discipline myself to practice paying attention audibly and not drift visually, yeah. So sound, music, so when we learn new things, phrases or like tones, when you change tone when you say a phrase or a musical, people come up with rhymes to remember things. That's an auditory, usually listening style. Does that make sense? Okay. We also have the verbal, which I would, it's also referred to as linguistic. Yeah? So linguistic is more speech. It is speech, and but it's words a little bit more than just the listening part. It's speaking, but it's how you use words. You love vocabulary. You love learning a new word and then using it just at the right moment. Like I know people like that. Melinda's a little bit like that. But my friend Jess is so linguistic. If you guys know Jess, Jo Faringer, it's her daughter. And she like learns words all the time, and then she loves just using them, right?
Don't play Scrabble with her.
And yeah, don't. It's people that love Scrabble, right? They have all these words. Anyway, so they're words. They like puns, like jokes that are like puns on words. That would be a linguistic type of. That would come out of that, yeah. And so they love the words and speech. Okay, the physical is also what we call kinesthetic, which I'm going to spell it wrong, so you know. Kinesthetic, which Krister was mentioning, being kinesthetic. That means that touching something, right? So physically actually being part of something. So hands, touch. But even when you're teaching, you can reach a kinesthetic person by talking about touch. Okay? So I want to put that out there because kinesthetic people tend to box themselves that they can't sit in a classroom. And I will be the first one to say, I don't know. Because if I talk about touching something, you're there 110%. Yeah? Or doing something, and in your mind you're doing it. Okay? And so as teachers and as people that are conducting, we just need to keep that in mind. You don't have to have a physical activity. You can just choose your language to reach them and pull them in, okay, through physical.
Yeah. I'm like predominantly kinesthetic, and I found that I need like examples or something.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went over the staff like thing, like I was like, I don't know what this looks like at all.
Yeah.
Until we get there, and then I'll like
Yeah.
get examples.
Yeah, because you want to walk through it
Yeah.
and think it and touch it and experience it, and yeah, totally. And so that's where those illustrations, those examples come in that help pull those people, kinesthetic type people in. Yeah.
Which is why we're doing skills.
Skills this week, Ellie. All right, so the other ones that I think that are really helpful is logical. And logical is also, people talk about mathematical, like a mathematical type of thinking. So these people, very logical reasoning. Okay, so you can learn something through reasoning. Why do I do it like this, and I do it like this because it makes sense to do it like this, and then they think it through logically with reason, and they're on board with you. So if you explain why you're doing something, they're there. But they're also deciding whether they agree with you because they're logically deciding themselves. So just throwing that out there, yeah? Okay. But they love it. But they love it if you can explain to them why. And we should be able to say why. So why are we doing what we're doing? Why am I talking about this right now? Well, because we're going to do these. Yeah. And then they're fully on board because they have a reason. Yeah. Okay. We also have social. And these are interpersonal is another word for that. Okay? And that's just someone who really loves learning in groups. Okay? They love learning with other people. They like talking, they like discussing, they like coming to conclusions. They like to hear someone else's perspective because they have an idea, but they actually really like hearing someone's perspective that might be completely different so that they can consider that. Yeah, they love the group interaction in learning and discussing, okay? And then you have what they call solitary. And those are intrapersonal. And those are people that like to do things by themselves. Okay? They like to study by themselves. They like to read by themselves. They're usually also more aware of themselves, generally speaking, than someone who's interpersonal. Because they actually are with themselves, so they know themselves well, and they interact with themselves, and so they're usually pretty self-aware, if that makes sense. Okay, so these are things to consider, and I'm sure as we explain them, you can identify with all of them in some form, right? Because we, as holistic, we very much have all of them. And I want to throw out there too that I am interpersonal and intrapersonal. And when I take the test, they are equal. And so it's very possible to be both of things that seem opposite. But I'm introverted, but I'm relational. I'm what they call a relational introvert. Okay? And so just because I'm introverted doesn't mean I don't want to be. I actually really do. I just tend to want to talk a little bit deeper with people because of the introspection of my side of myself. And so I'm not into talking about the weather and like things like that. But I can, so that we can getting to actually connect on a greater level. Yeah? That's my personality, yeah? But when I learn, I love discussing. I love the group discussion, but I also like taking that away and reflecting on that by myself. Yeah? Seems like a lot of work, doesn't it? I feel like it does. I feel like it is a lot of times, actually. And I'm very visual. Okay, so what that helps me because I can fully engage myself in different ways. Okay, and I'm choosing at this moment, this is how we are interacting. This is what I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to embrace that, and I'm going to enter into that. Okay, and so it helps us, but it helps also with someone else. If I know we usually do this on our schools at the BCC. I ask my students, okay, let's do this test just to get an idea. Most of the school is visual. That doesn't mean that I'm only going to do visual exercises. It means that I'm going to pay attention to making sure that I do use visuals consistently on things that I really want them to grab a hold of. Does that make sense? And how can I do that? So it helps us as people facilitating to consider, how can I add visuals? How can I orally come up with a repeated phrase? Preachers are totally, 3-point sermon. repeat. That's right? They usually have a way that they say it, and they say it the same every time, so that when someone comes back, they repeat it the same way that they heard it. That's just auditory remembrance of stuff like, yeah. So repeating is one of those. Does that make sense so far? I just want to see, does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, so what you're saying, I pretty much can relate to all of those things. I thought I was visual, but then I'm not really sure if I am. So how do you find out what your main, like, way you learn is?
You can go take a test online, which I would encourage you to do. Sometimes, depending on the questions, you'll come out with different responses. But I think that's because, like I said, we are holistic beings. And so if I'm in worship, how am I learning in that context is different than the main way I would learn in this context. Because in and of myself, I would lean onto something, okay? And so maybe it's I don't know if it's just because I'm aware of myself, but I'm pretty aware when I get into a situation what I lean on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I would take I think the online tests are valid to give you an idea, and then it helps you think it through because it'll give you a little summary at the end, and I'll also tell you like some tips on how to help yourself in different situations.
Multiple intelligences.
Yeah.
Multiple intelligence
Yeah.
tests.
Yeah. Multiple intelligence, learning styles. Yeah.
Both of those.
And look for one where you don't have to like sign up to get your results. Yeah. There is plenty of them that are there. I think Utopia or Utopia Educational. It's an education site. I think they do it. It's the one that our students do regularly. So the reason I bring this up is because one.
Edutopia.
Edutopia. That's it. Education.
Edutopia, like education topia.
Yeah, I think that is one of them. Here, I'll put it. Don't kill me if it's wrong, but that's, I think, one of the websites. Okay, so why is this important? Okay, so for me, as an example, I am visual, learner, okay? So to help myself when I'm sitting, I need something visual. So for instance, when I go to a meeting like the Thursday night meeting, I have to be careful. I can't sit too far back because I get distracted by the people in front of me, but I can handle it with a certain degree. And then visually for me, it's the speaker, right? And if I need to do something kinesthetically, which I'm also, then I just doodle on my page. But it can be distracting if I get too involved in my doodle because then that's visual. Yeah? Because I always was confused by that. I'm like, okay, they tell me to doodle, but then I'm totally into my drawing and I totally not hearing what's going on. And so this was at the beginning when I didn't understand how this works. But I need to know those things about myself so I can engage better. Okay, so for me, but I can listen to the same teaching that I loved in person on an iPod and totally not be the same because it's not someone in front of me, because it's visually, I'm engaged in a whole different way. Yeah. And so it's just some of those things to consider. And when you're there, how do I engage? And sometimes when I'm tired, I guess for me, I explained with being sick, I'm tired a lot. So then I default to things that are easier for myself when I'm tired. So Thursday night, every Thursday, I'm tired. I don't know about y'all, but so then I come in and I default to whatever's the easiest way to learn at that moment. So I sit closer and I fix my attention visually on what's going on. Yeah. When I teach other people, I need to consider what they are, but then there's defaults. If I have a default, then that's what I will default to teach from. So if Ellie's kinesthetic, then she's always thinking about how to do this actively with everybody else, because that's where she empathizes. That's where she Yeah? But we have to be able to understand everyone and exercise ourselves to enter into all of these things. Okay? Another thing that I found interesting as I thought about this and have been learning is I asked you this morning how God speaks to you, and then how does he reveal that to you? I think that's really important to consider because God knows us better than ourselves. And if he wants us to understand something, he will deliver it to us in a way we can learn from him. Okay? And not always. He does it in different forms and different ways. But I thought it was interesting that Ellie was in physical pain. And she's kinesthetic. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's something to consider about God. The Holy Spirit teaches us. He is our teacher. And I really do think, as I've thought of reflected, he teaches us in ways where we can actually learn from him. Yeah? But he also stretches us in other ways because he wants us to branch out beyond those safe grounds. Okay? So sometimes I actually think, this heresy, sometimes we don't hear God because he's actually trying to teach us something different. Yeah? And he wants us to branch out of our... And so we're not quite getting it. We're not quite getting it. We're not quite... And then when we get it, we're like, how did I miss that? Right? But it's because he's teaching us. That's the job. That's the Holy Spirit is our teacher. So God is always teaching us. And we are always teaching one another. It's just how are we meeting each other, and are we recognizing the needs of one another to meet in those times. Okay? This is why I think this is really important. You don't have to overthink it or make it, but it's something to consider. How can I meet my small group if they're all visual learners? If that was me, I was coming to my small group, I would draw something in my preparation time for them to look at. Yeah? It could be something really simple. Doesn't even have to be like this phenomenal thing. It's just something visual where they can attach what you said to a picture. That's it.
Print it out off the internet.
And yeah, you print it off, you hold it up while you're teaching. They have a visual reference, and they'll remember what you said because there was something visual there for them to attach to. Okay? And that's how we would use this kind of understanding, because our desire is to impart and for them not just to remember it and be repeating it, but to continue to grow as well. Okay? So I want, just take a minute then. Some of you shared out loud how God spoke to you. Okay? You can think of a time where God spoke to you, and how did he speak to you? Okay? This morning, God had me go sit in the grass with the trees and the birds, and for me, I needed that default of a what do you call it? A visual. It was really beautiful. The sun was coming in. I thought, this is like the most beautiful thing ever. And I'm like, well, how do I miss this every day? But then at the same time, I realized afterwards God led me to that spot because that's what I needed to just kind of recenter myself for this week. Does that make sense? Okay. So just think about that for a minute and see how God teaches you. And it might help to understand yourself a little bit as well. Okay, does anybody want to share? Don't have to, but does anybody want to share that anything that they might have realized how God speaks to them?
Maybe I want to share the two things.
Okay.
First thing is what is my learning style? I think I'm the mathematical and intrapersonal and music things. Yeah, but that's me. But what I learned through God, I need to also develop the other learning style. So I'm learning and I'm developing other areas also. That's first what I want to share. And second thing is, the last school I experienced in small group, one students really want to do homework with the drawing, and one students really want to have a reading group time by himself. But we may just ask students some specific style, the homework writing, the writing style, and the reading group read together. So that was challenging me. But what I tried for him exactly that two person is same person. He want to reading by himself. He wanna do homework by drawing.
Yeah.
So, but that is really challenging to me. But at the same time, I wanna really let him have a chance to learn and let him grow up. So, in homework session, I just allow him one of the 5 the homework requirement. I just told him you can choose only one, with the drawing.
Yeah.
And I just observe him how he works faithfully with his drawing.
Totally. Yeah.
And also, every Friday, I just give him, you can read by yourself only on Friday. But I will see you, but it's not the final decision. I will just work with you.
Yeah.
So after a few weeks, still I just had a chance to talk with him. How's going? It's good, or you feel do not set apart from us. Things. So I think the reading is helpful, but the drawing is not helpful for him. So I changed again the plan. But I think, that kind of the trial for students is useful. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I think it is okay, and those boundaries aren't set by me. Those boundaries would be set by Angie and, But the idea is when you are teaching and there's education involved, there should be all of them. And there should be a place for that. And I think that I would commend what you did, because you wanted to, it's not normal for you. You don't understand because that's not your strength, that's theirs. And you let them, try that. I think that we always, Melinda and myself, always try to leave room. And in a lot of assignments, we try to create assignments that leave room for people's preferenced way of doing something like that. So this school, we created this whole aspect of the timeline. People that draw, they can do all kinds of stuff on this timeline creatively to process and to do. But then maybe someone's not into drawing, so then all they do is draw the line and they put their things on a timeline, right? And so it's the idea of having assignments where there is flexibility for people to process them a little bit differently. And the heart of the assignment. So if the heart of the assignment's being met, that's awesome, right? Because that's really what we want them to get. We're going to talk about reading in a little bit. Melinda's going to share with us about reading, because that one's always a challenging one for people that want to be by themselves. It's challenging for lots of reasons, but it's also, from my experience on the BCC that we run, we read together. It's also been one of the most powerful discipleship tools of the school, because people have to choose preferring one another, loving one another, and including one another into a learning process. And so it's challenging to extend that and not be able to do it the way you've always done it, if that makes sense. So, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think there should be some room for flexibility, yeah, in assignments. Does anybody else want to share what they might have come to understand about themselves and maybe how God speaks to them? Leah.
I'm a visual and oral, and it just makes sense that for me, whenever I buy a journal book that has lines, it just never works. I just don't use them all.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense because I tend to draw and I tend to process, and even the font size and the font text style, I have to be very diverse in that, and so having lines just bugs me. So I realized that about my journal is why I don't buy lined books. And then the oral part, it makes sense now because every season of my life I always have a playlist. Because God speaks to me through music, not just Christian music, but secular music as well. And so it just makes sense, why I have playlists in my iPod, and I tend to go by the playlist every season and change them every season.
That's great. That's good. I just realized that's why I probably don't like lines in my journal then either. I was like, oh yeah, that's so true. Anyway, it's good. It's good. So do you see how this could be helpful for you as well in times of needing to engage? Okay, so let's say we're going to sit in class all day and Ellie knows that we're going to sit here, and she could bring something to play with in her hands. Yeah. Right? She's being proactive in and of herself, right? To engage in a way that she needs to engage. That's also, when we understand these, we can help somebody that is not wanting to maybe read with everyone, but we can help them to figure out how to engage with the reading in a different way, even though that's not, because they're a holistic being. They can actually engage within the reading. It's just figuring out, why is it hard? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very physical, kinesthetic, and super kinesthetic. You can tell me how small groups are gonna work and how all this is gonna work, and map it out in front of me, super detailed, and then we'll go do it, and I don't learn anything until I'm actually doing it. You kind of have to baby me through it, showing me something 5 or 6 times, like I'm a 5-year-old. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it clicks in me, and then I just get it. I'm super good at it. Yeah. But it's a kind of a slow process where people almost think I'm dumb because I don't get anything auditorily. You can tell me things, and I just don't understand. Yeah. And so when I was a student in DBS, I hated small groups. I hated reading the Bible out loud. I just didn't get anything out of it. So I'm super kinesthetic. So my question is, how can you help someone learn who's very kinesthetic like that, who just doesn't I don't when I hear things from other people, when they're reading John out loud, I'm just I don't want to be here, I'm not learning. I'm thinking myself, because I'm also interpersonal, I could be in the prayer room. If I had 2 hours a day to study John on my own, I would get 10 times more out of John if I had my own 2 hours to go study this. And I know that I signed up for DBS and I signed up for the out loud reading, but that's the thing